This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerate it. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
The Republican Party's racist.
Oh my God! He admitted!
Found the nation. Waldorf Nation. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Friday. We got a lot of stories. We got Ron DeSantis's weirdo eating habits. A very interesting show today. We have, of course, more stuff, including Mar-A-Lago. Apparently, even the cooks are getting subpoenaed. Interesting. We have Florida, of course, a result of Ron DeSantis's laws. So, which basically is rewriting history. So, yeah, that is some very dangerous stuff here. I'm going to give you the details on what exactly is going on when it comes to Florida. Then, what is up with elected officials and their weird eating? You know, Ravaging Wolverine, that is a good question. Very good question. Then, we are also going to talk about a Republican who doesn't think hunger exists because he's never met anybody that was hungry. Come on. Wow. So, yeah. Again, all sorts of hilarious and ridiculous stories. So, but we'll start out, of course, with Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden. That's an interesting story as well. So, with that, please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. Let's dive in. Let's get to the madness. The madness, and you know, well, just basically the madness. I mean, that's what it all is these days. Okay. It appears that Hunter Biden is, well, going after the computer shop owner that disseminated his information from the so-called laptop from hell. So now he has officially filed a countersuit against shop owner John Paul Mac Isaac. So now, interestingly enough, this is actually a countersuit. So now, originally, John Paul Mac Isaac had sued Hunter over suggestions that he was part of a Russian plot to undermine the election using Hunter's private personal data. Some of that data, of course, included sensitive photos and videos of Hunter Biden engaging in some salacious activities. Stuff that definitely you would want to keep personal, that you would not want all over the internet for every weirdo right-winger to try to stare at. And look, I'm going to be honest about this, right? I have noticed, and you can get mad at me for it, but I have noticed that there were a lot of people on the right that were very, very thirsty for Hunter Biden's dick pics.
Tallywhacker.
Testicles.
I'm not saying anything, okay, except that it seems a little weird. They're very, very obsessed with Hunter Biden's junk. I don't know why. And of course, when you have half the, I wouldn't say half the country, but a pretty big chunk of the right-wing electorate in this country that are obsessing over your dick and showing these pictures, which are, by the way, very, very personal and very private, you're going to get upset about it. And so the reaction here is understandable. So yes, the countersuit claim is, of course, the fact that John Paul Mac Isaac, had violated Hunter Biden's privacy by sharing that private information with allies of then President Donald Trump, including people like Rudy Giuliani. So now he said, look, no matter how you came into the possession of this laptop and this information specifically, right? These pictures, these videos, all this stuff. You still, this is the counterclaim asserting that Isaac improperly accessed and, more importantly, disseminated those files. So, look, yes, Hunter Biden left the laptop there, did not go and retrieve it. That laptop subsequently became the property of John Paul Mac Isaac. But still, they're arguing that, look, even though the laptop itself was yours under this law, still, you didn't have a right to then take my personal photos and disseminate them online. And I think that seems perfectly reasonable, considering how a lot of this stuff that was released, it was the salacious stuff. It was the stuff that was that basically could be considered to be revenge porn. And there are laws against that. And so he could definitely make that argument and maybe be pretty successful with it. In fact, the lawsuit says that Mr. Biden just wants any copy of his data as well as monetary compensation for Mr. Mac Isaac's willful, wanton, and reckless conduct, as well as reimbursement for attorney's fees. As a result of Mac Isaac's unlawful agreement and its conspiracy with others, the lawsuit alleges, Mr. Biden's personal data was made available to third parties and then ultimately to the public at large, which is highly offensive, causing harm to Mr. Biden and his reputation. Now, look, let me just say, and again, I'm being super obvious, or I'm, super honest here about this, right? And it does seem pretty obvious to me, but Hunter Biden has done a lot to damage his own reputation. Aside from that, and again, Hunter Biden is a deeply troubled person, and I actually hope that he is able to get, or has been able to get, help in dealing with addiction, his addiction issues, and all that stuff, and to get him on a better path. Well, because honestly, I want, it doesn't matter, who you are, what your political affiliation is. I don't want people to have to suffer through that kind of addiction. Now, in this case, that addiction did happen to lead to all of this massive invasion into his personal and private information in what is an absolutely political effort to hurt the election chances of his father. And so that's where it gets super gross. Aside from the sharing the dick pics, this was all political. This was a political hitch up to hurt Joe Biden. So now, in fact, the object, according to the lawsuit, of invading, the object of invading Mr. Biden's privacy and disseminating his data was not for any legitimate purpose, but to cause harm and embarrassment to Mr. Biden. Fair. So, look, the way that I look at it, I'm a little bit versed in computer repair, right? I never ran a computer repair shop or anything like that, but, I know the basics of it. And when to my understanding, not only as somebody who has a little bit of that background, but also someone who has common decency, if someone drops off a laptop and forgets to pick it up, I would say that it's not exactly the best practice for you to go snooping through it, even if they never came to pick it up. I would just be like, okay, wipe the data. There you go. Now, some of the arguments against that is, well, what if they had evidence of potential crimes on there? Well, again, if you don't have any suspicion that there is any information on this laptop about potential crimes, then it shouldn't be your business to go in and, snoop through that data looking for evidence of potential crimes. And so, again, that's personally what I'm thinking. But again, as far as best practices go, as someone who's supposed to be a professional that you trust with your devices that, yes, could contain personal data and racy pictures or images, videos, etc., just don't go snooping through it. Sorry, call it a professional courtesy. But it just seems very gross and politically motivated. Again, considering that John Paul Mac Isaac has, he's a conspiracy theorist, believes in, the deep state, that kind of thing, and is a big Trump supporter. So he's got his politics, and of course, somebody with the last name of Biden comes in, drops off their stuff, and then that stuff becomes your property. I think it's definitely a political motive in looking through that stuff. I'm an IT guy, Jeff. I would never go through someone's data, period. I would do the DoD hard drive wipe, 7 passes, and then move on. What the guy did was wrong. Yeah, again, that's the whole point that I'm trying to make. It's not good and professional to do that. To look through people's personal data, even if, again, the law said that after, and Biden had signed that agreement, that if you didn't come to pick it up, you essentially abandoned it. Abandoned or not, it's still not cool to go through and disseminate people's personal information. But as I said before, the only reason you look through it is because it belonged to a Biden, and there was a political motive here. And again, the reason the information on it was of interest to people is because of these political reasons. And again, the motivation here for giving over that information, disseminating it to allies of former President Donald Trump or then President Donald Trump was, of course, for personal gain. In my opinion. That doesn't mean that Hunter Biden isn't at fault for leaving the laptop there and allowing for someone to, I guess trusting someone to not go through what was on that laptop. I definitely think he shouldn't have done that, but that doesn't excuse what John Paul Mac Isaac had done. And so, again, I just want to be very, very clear here that I'm not blaming Biden and not excusing what John Paul Mac Isaac had done, but I'm also not letting Biden get away with, of course, well, get away is kind of a weird, term to use, but it's like, you probably should have known better, especially since you knew what was on your own device, and you knew as a Biden, you had to have known that your dad has political presidential aspirations, and maybe you should be more careful. I'm just saying, when it comes to politics, you all know, and I say it all the time, politics is dirty. Dirty, dirty, dirty. And so, yes, just try, I guess, to do the minimum to not just protect yourself and your own data from unscrupulous people, but also your dad. It just seems like a common sense kind of thing. But as I said before, it is incredibly gross. Incredibly gross for John Paul Mac Isaac to do. So, again, getting back to the politics, right? I just can't help but think that, like, look at it this way. Imagine all your dirty secrets, homemade explicit images and videos that you made. If you made that. The broadcast for the world to hear, all in order to protect the political aspirations of your dad. So, I mean, imagine, like, feeling that violation, because that's what it is. It's a violation. And so, in that case, and again, this violation was mainly used as a political weapon in order to attack a member of your family. You would be pissed. I'd be pissed. And of course, I would do probably what Hunter Biden's doing. And and I would sue. And I think it's actually a smart political choice for him to pick up and fight. Because after all, at the end of the day, an invasion of privacy like this is just uncalled for, unspeakable, and to see it wielded as a political weapon, ineffectively, by the way. I mean, it's just beyond the pale. And so I'm glad. I hope the guy gets his life together, obviously, or has gotten his life together. And by the way, if he did, not pay his taxes or commit any sort of crimes, then obviously you should, face consequences for that. And I would apply that evenly to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're, what side of the political island you're on, if you're the son or daughter of Donald Trump, or if you're the son of, Joe Biden or any other politician. We should have a law that applies equally to everyone, no matter their politics. If you do something wrong, yes, you should get in trouble for it and should have to, owe up for it and take responsibility for it, right? But that said, here, I like that Biden is actually taking the opportunity to fight back against this. Okay. All right. Let's move on. I hope Rudy Giuliani is part of that lawsuit. Not sure if that is the case here. Okay. Let's move on to their story. With everyone passing around copies of the hard drive, how many little bits were added or removed to it? Chris Green, that's another great point. Even like John Paul Mac Isaac admitted that he's like, I don't know if the stuff that they're saying was actually on or originally part of the information of the copy that I had given. There could be, other bad faith actors, that were adding more salacious stuff to it. So, yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the Trump. The news of a Trump tape. Ooh, interesting. All right. Apparently, another Trump tape has dropped, and experts are apparently stunned. I'm not exactly sure why, because as we get into the details here, it's going to be, I think, something that we all kind of expected. So let's get into that. Salon reports that a Fulton County grand jury recently had heard a previously unreported recording of former President Donald Trump pressuring a top Georgia Republican to help overturn his election loss in the state. Of course. I told you were not going to be surprised. Another tape of Donald Trump trying to pressure them to give him the election. What a surprise. Wow, I never would have seen this coming. But anyway, Okay. Now, according to a report by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the 5 grand jurors who spoke with AJC revealed that investigators have an audio recording of Trump pressuring then Georgia House Speaker David Ralston, the late David Ralston, to push for a special session to reverse President Joe Biden's win. One juror told AJC that on the call, Ralston had proved to be an amazing politician. So, look, I would like to hear the tape, but it's not been publicly released yet, as far as my knowledge. But nonetheless, they go through and they talk about what they had heard. The speaker, they said, basically cut the president off. I will do everything in my power that I think is appropriate, he said, which took the wind out of Trump's sails.
Can't let that happen.
The juror said that Trump had replied, well, thank you, is all he could say. Now, look, Ralston, by the way, had died last year. That's why I call him the late David Ralston. But he had revealed Trump's call in December of 2020, the day after it had happened. Trump, he said, would like a special session at the Georgia General Assembly. He's been clear on that before, and it was clear on that in the phone conversation yesterday. I shared with him my belief that based on the understanding I have of Georgia law, that it was going to be a very much an uphill battle, Ralston told a local news outlet. Ralston then explained that there were just not enough votes in the state legislature to call a special session, and Governor Brian Kemp had declined to call for one despite Donald Trump's pressure. So, look, Donald Trump was around pressuring pretty much everyone he could in the state in order to have them find him additional votes. Just a few more, one more vote than what I need. That's all. One more vote than what I need, and then I'll be happy. Just find me the votes. Just find me the votes. And they all had to explain to him, sir, that there aren't the votes. You just don't have them. You don't have enough votes. You lost the state. Yeah, but can you find them for me? Why don't you do a special session to kind of undo this and then hand over the state to me? Based on what? Based on pretty please. Cherry on top. Maybe I'll throw in a Trump water. Big water. Great water. Ocean water. So, look, this would be the third Trump phone call that I'm aware of that was intended to pressure this state, the state of Georgia, to overturn Joe Biden's win. And by the way, that does not include the Trump associates who had made similar calls. Giuliani, I don't know, Lindsey Graham. Sorry, I'm blanking on his name for a second. But yeah, Lindsey Graham also had tried to pressure state officials in Georgia to help Donald Trump, to give him votes that he did not earn. And I think that's really important. Okay. So as I said before, or asked, what evidence did they have to try to overturn it? Again, nothing. No evidence that was found of votes being flipped, stolen, rigged, or lost. Sorry, sad day for you. There was no basis for calling a special session for trying to overturn the vote. And they knew that. And David Ralston, again, he's like, no, that's going to get me in trouble. In fact, Ralston, let's see. He then referred to Trump legal advisor John Eastman's January 6th strategy to have the certification of Biden's victory blocked in Congress, mainly by former Vice President Mike Pence.
Mike Pounds.
And he referred to it as this, quote, "That's something I think we want to tread very, very carefully around, because that could be used against us someday." As is this call for a special session. Well, with the jury hearing this tape, he was ultimately proven correct. So, no, look, getting back to the number of calls. One call, to pressure them, bad enough. Two, rather suspicious, not good. Three, well, that indicates a clear-cut pattern. So this is, again, evidence that Donald Trump knew what he was doing in trying to call and pressure all of these legislators to basically ignore the will of the voters in Georgia and in other places, by the way, to, again, ignore it so that he could remain in power, to take the power for himself with votes that he did not earn. And that's the real problem here. That is the big issue. It is, again, undemocratic and authoritarian. Now, two former federal prosecutors weighed in on this. It's Renato Mariotti, who called this report jaw-dropping. Again, I don't really think that this is a surprise. Nonetheless, people are acting surprised. I don't know why. And you also have former U.S. Attorney Harry Littman calling this incendiary and asks, how big does Willis want to go in with her charges? Look, here's the thing, though. Okay. So I understand that the panel in Georgia had recommended indictments for more than a dozen people, but we don't know if Donald Trump's one of them. We just don't know. That ends up being up to Willis. Now, I'm trying to be a positive person, but I'm also, when it comes to people actually holding Donald Trump accountable, I'm very skeptical. And there's a reason for that, of course. Because every time they have tried to hold him accountable, it has never worked. So, and again, that's for various different reasons. Republicans coming in and protecting Donald Trump at all costs. People who are just afraid of Donald Trump. I mean, the list goes on, right? And so I'm a little skeptical that, again, even though, yes, this is a clear pattern of Donald Trump interfering in a state election to, essentially steal power for himself. I still don't think that they're going to have the courage or the ability to hold him accountable. And so, look, right now, by the way, Fannie Willis might actually be, wanting to do this, to, take Donald Trump and hold him accountable for interfering in the election and doing this, illegal pressure campaign. But she might not even have the opportunity to do so. Georgia Republicans are working on passing laws to remove prosecutors like Willis. So again, she might not even have the chance. And this is for daring to go after Donald Trump. Even though it's very, very clear what Trump tried to do, trying to steal the election, I'm just afraid that he might get away with it. It's just, yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's move on. More stuff happening in Trump's bad week. But as usual, we're going to see if my skepticism holds in this story as well. What's that?
Can't let that happen.
Oh, one of my favorite. Okay. By the way, before I get into this, Gabby Mathis, thank you for the incredibly generous $100 super chat. My vape just quit, but Jeff, you go on. We need your show. Thank you so much. Thank you. Can't thank you enough. Gabby Mathis, again, you're absolutely amazing, as are the rest of you who are watching. And, just being here. I really appreciate it. Okay. So let's move on. All right. Wow, that is a weirdo wall of text. Okay. You go, man. You go. You just keep furiously typing. Okay. All right. The Office of Special Counsel Jack Smith has dropped subpoenas on members of former President Donald Trump's inner circle, as well as on Mar-A-Lago resort staff members. So, according to CNN, at least 24 people have been subpoenaed to testify in the federal grand jury that is investigating the former president's handling of classified documents. Now, look, I'm going to be honest about this. I'm very skeptical that Donald Trump is going to face any sort of accountability for in the documents. Okay, especially since, of course, they had found documents, in Joe Biden's President Joe Biden's possession from when he was vice president, and so you don't hear a lot of discussion about the documents, scandal. Even though I do think that it's massively problematic that Trump had not only taken documents that don't belong to him, but also had fought, in returning the documents that clearly did not belong to him, and then of course, had tried to fight in every single way. Also had lied about returning documents when he said he had returned all of them and actually hadn't, and some of them were actually, top secret documents, classified documents, that he had not declassified, at least openly, to anyone. Nonetheless, I still don't feel like there's going to be any sort of accountability in this. And I think mainly that's because of politics. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. We'll give you more details, and maybe you all can show me where I'm wrong, essentially. But first, Smith has sought testimony from a range of people close to Trump, from his own attorneys who represent him, in the matter to staffers who work on the grounds of Mar-A-Lago, including a housekeeper and restaurant servers. So, now the staffers are of interest to investigators because of what they may have seen or heard while on their daily duties around the estate, or whether they saw boxes or documents in Trump's office suite or elsewhere. So, look, the other one of the big issues here is, of course, having this classified material that is being seen by people who do not have security clearance. I mean, again, I think that's one of the big issues, because I actually do care about national security. And so, yes, if there are things that are of issues that they're absolutely top secret level that had not been declassified, having people around it, like the wait staff, possibly see those documents and what's in them, yeah, I think that's a bit of a problem. Personally. But that's it, right? One source familiar with the Justice Department's efforts basically called the matter an extremely wide net, saying that the Department of Justice is casting the extremely wide net, anyone and everyone who might have seen something. So they're basically talking, as I said, to the maids, and who knows, of course, the kind of stuff that they've seen. Look, I've said before, to be a fly on the wall at Mar-A-Lago at some point, you're bound to see and hear some not only hilarious stuff, maybe some crazy things, perhaps even some illegal things. Keeping it real. Well, I mean, they might be the proverbial fly on the wall. Maybe. Now, are they talking? I don't know. Or I should say, are they going to talk? Nobody knows. Not yet, at least. Now, federal investigators have already talked to a Mar-A-Lago staff member seen on security camera footage moving boxes from a storage room with Trump aide Walt Nauta, who has already spoken with investigators. And again, we don't know exactly what was told to investigators. But what concerns me here is also part of this report that says these staffers have already been lawyered up by Trump entities who are paying for these lawyers. So that suggests to me that any information that is given, again, is very, very tightly controlled. So they might not have gotten anything out of the staffers, assuming the staffers knew anything in the first place. So, and you also have to point out the fact that if they actually do talk, well, it's their job on the line. They're guaranteed they're going to be fired in retaliation, even if it's, if there's even a slight belief that they had mentioned something, if they had seen something. So I don't know how successful this effort's going to be. But yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Now, this gets me to the overall, I guess, point here. The optics. You can really see this in two different ways, right? You could see this, from the liberal perspective of like, aggressive. Here's Jack Smith. He is aggressive. He is casting the wide net. He's going to get him any minute now. And then there's the MAGA side. Oh, Jack Smith, desperate. He's even going after the maids, the wait staff. Oh, what are you going to do? Look, those are basically the two different ways that you're going to see this, okay? Desperation or aggressive. I'm not really concerned personally about the optics. Look, I know that Donald Trump, well, okay, no is not the right term. I suspect that Trump knowingly took the documents for personal gain, because it fits what Donald Trump does. He does everything for personal gain. And I think he also believes that he's legitimately above the law. And look, considering how he's fairly untouchable at this point, I mean, he has to feel fairly untouchable because all the investigations haven't failed to touch him. Again, for the various different reasons. And so, look, will he face any kind of consequences? You ask me, I don't think he will. And that's not to say that Jack Smith is doing a bad job. That's not to say that Donald Trump is innocent. He's an angel. He's never done anything wrong in his life. Never. No. Personally, you all know my feelings about Donald Trump. I think he's personally corrupt. I think he's in it for personal gain. And the whole reason that he became president was to help himself by stuffing public money into his pockets. Now, he of course, does the normal. So he does fake populism to get elected, of course. And I think all politicians, to a certain degree, do that. But Donald Trump was successful because he seemed to be authentic. We know that he's not, but he seemed to be authentic to MAGA people, and that's why they love him. So it's like, I'm going to go after the rich, I'm sorry, not the rich. No, he's going to help the rich. But he says, well, I'm going to go after the elites, you see. And then, well, and that's because, see, what the elites do is they pay the politicians. You see, because I was the people that bought the politicians, and I know that they do whatever the hell I want. But I'm not going to be that way. And of course, he's totally that way. No, people put money in front of Donald Trump and say, you can have that money if you do what I want. Well, you think he's not going to take the money? And of course he's going to take the money. He's going to, what do you want? Yeah, you go forward. Give me the money. I'll take the money. Yeah, I'm going to stuff it right in my pocket. And so, look, he does the normal, political corruption, but then adds personal corruption on top of it. That's who Donald Trump is. And again, this is all an effort to stuff money into his own pockets. It's always been the goal. He's not a political person. He's just a corrupt person and is very, very greedy. That's all it is. And so, look, I don't think Trump is going to get, or have to face the consequences of taking these government documents that were not his in the first place and, refuse to return them. In refusing to return them, I don't think he's going to face any sort of consequences, because at the end of the day, understand that this isn't about the law. I think we have two different justice systems in this country. We have a justice system for the rich and powerful, and we have a justice system for the rest of us. And that justice system gets unevenly applied to the different groups. Things that would land an average person in jail, you'd be untouched as a rich person. Because generally, unless you rob other rich people, you don't go to prison if you're a rich person, if you're a powerful person. And that's unfortunately where what I see happening. Powerful people, especially ex-presidents of the United States, they're never held accountable for these things. Never held accountable. Did George W. Bush get held accountable for doing 2 unfunded wars in the Middle East? No, he's a literal war criminal. Is he going to get held accountable? No. It's because there are different rules for them. Different rules. And I think at the end of the day, based on this, Merrick Garland, despite what Jack Smith finds, right? Because I think Jack Smith is actually a very capable, prosecutor, right? Investigator. I think that ultimately, since the decision is made by Merrick Garland, he's going to make a political decision. And that political decision will ultimately be not to prosecute Trump. He'll say something along the lines of, for the good of the country, to keep this country together, we cannot indict the former president. And the Democrats, unfortunately, I think will say, well, we must move on and heal the country by looking forward and not backwards. Right now, and I say this because, again, it's the politics of it, right? I think the Democrats only really know how to run against someone like Donald Trump, like specifically Trump. Now, look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm super pessimistic about this. I really do hope that I am off base here, that I'm just being like super black pill doomer. But I just feel like this is the most likely outcome. Elites protecting elites. And Donald Trump, of course, is one of the elites. And it's not because they like Donald Trump. They all despise him. No, I think it's more of a concern about, hey, look, if Donald Trump goes down for something like this, well, then I could possibly go down for this or something similar. I don't like that idea. No, you come after one of us, one of the elites, then we're going to protect our own. Now, again, hopefully I'm wrong. It sends a precedent that no one is safe. Yeah, no one in the elite. It's right. That's right. Okay. Let's go to Ron DeSantis and how apparently he's weird. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Apparently, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has a few odd habits. Okay. Let's get into the details, okay? According to multiple sources speaking to the Daily Beast, Ron DeSantis has some issues with his social skills. Normally, that wouldn't be any sort of an issue. Why would this matter? Well, that's because Ron DeSantis could be running a presidential campaign against Donald Trump, who actually is someone who does not have issues with social skills. So it goes into the politics, which is pretty interesting. Now, some of these former staffers to Ron DeSantis, as well as other Republicans who have dealt with him, people at, for example, political events, well, they say that the Florida governor, struggles with some basic social skills. And that his allies are working in early primary states in order to structure his events to prevent any sort of unexpected interactions between the public and a candidate who is off-putting at best and rude at worst. Putting a little distance between you and the rabble, the riffraff. Some quotes here. I love it. Now, one veteran event host in an early primary state said this: "The DeSantis campaign is easily the least responsive campaign I have ever dealt with. We invite, ping, 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 and we don't hear anything." So, running his campaign incredibly tightly and saying, look, we have to have a lot of control over these events. And look, it's not like there's not precedent for this. When it comes to DeSantis, I remember showing you a video, I believe it was last week, of Trump supporters led by Laura Loomer trying to protest outside of a DeSantis book signing. And DeSantis says, get those people out of here. If you're wearing a Trump shirt, get out. You are not welcome on the premises. Not a good look. Not a good look at all. Now, 3 former DeSantis staffers also described him personally as quiet, no matter the occasion. Someone who keeps to himself, a little bit of a loner, perhaps. Now, they said that this has made the shift to the national scene harder than anticipated, particularly in the governor's hesitation when it comes to delegation and his insistence on maintaining a very small orbit. So, I'm getting 2 things already. Number one, he's not into political events. Well, he wouldn't be the only one. Let's be fair. That said, is that going to be a problem if he's going to run against Donald Trump? Yes. Of course. It's going to be very difficult for him to, especially on the debate stage, if they ever even make it that far. Now, let's see. There's more. A GOP strategist who has no horse in the 2024 race even compared DeSantis' early approach to that of his potential general election opponent, arguing that the governor has embraced, quote, a Tallahassee basement strategy. Ooh. No, that's not
Sexual anarchy.
No, it's apparently a shot at DeSantis using President Joe Biden, saying that it mirrored Biden's strategy in 2020, where he had hidden from the press and real voters. Republicans saying this about DeSantis. Can you believe it? He's doing just like Joe Biden. He's hiding. Where are you, DeSantis? Hiding in the basement? Not a good sign. By the way, his allies that speak up to defend him, I don't think they're doing him any favors. Here's one quote from former Representative Francis Rooney, who is an influential Republican donor. He said this: Ron is a little reserved and dry compared to George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Yes, he's very dry.
Wet ass P word.
No, the opposite of that. Dry. Like a desert. He is what he is, though. So what he needs to do is organize his campaign to minimize that characteristic. So now he also mentioned, he mentioned George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. It would be, I guess, really, really bad if someone were to make, a comparison between DeSantis and another Florida politician.
Please clap.
I'll leave it to you to guess which one. But now several former staffers of the governor told the Daily Beast almost everything DeSantis does is scripted. which, coupled with an aversion to small talk, general pleasantries, and any unplanned interaction with the public, make him difficult to manage ahead of events. One former DeSantis staffer told the Daily Beast, quote, "It's very prescribed," while adding that there are limited off-the-cuff interactions while on the trail with DeSantis. It's apparently managed so tightly that his campaign had requested bike racks in order to wall off DeSantis from the public during a visit in Iowa. This is according to a New Hampshire ally. One New Hampshire GOP legislator says this: "If they want 50 bike racks, we'll give them 50 bike racks." Now, Ron, why would you want to wall yourself off from the people? Aren't you serving the people? Don't you love the people? These are your voters, man, or potential voters. Who you're trying to woo? What do you want? Why are you hiding? You want to talk to him? No, it's because he's an elite. Ron DeSantis is an elite establishment Republican. He has no desire to mingle with the riffraff. Elitist. Now, let me tell you, do open elitists, you think they're going to do very well in a Republican primary? If you're an elitist? No, I don't think so. I mean, in fact, this may be probably one of the most damning quotes here from an event primary host. He basically compared Ron DeSantis' campaign approach to that of Hillary Clinton in her 2016 run. Kiss of death right there. Oh, yeah, he's acting, his campaign's like Hillary Clinton's. What? I mean, again, look at it from a Republican perspective. You compare your campaign to Hillary Clinton's campaign? That's not very high praise. Oof. Now, look, there's another thing, too, and maybe they're afraid that he is so socially awkward that he's going to make some gaffes. Now, look, does Joe Biden make gaffes? Literally all the time. Okay. Some of the weird ones, like talking about Corn Pop, and Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran around with a bunch of bad boys. Okay, and what a weirdo story. Please tell us about what you're going to do for healthcare, because that's what's really important. But okay, trying to protect him from gaffes. So what kind of gaffes are we talking about? One of them that they're trying to protect people from seeing is apparently DeSantis's eating habits. Weird. Okay, so now, one former DeSantis staffer told the Daily Beast, quote, "He would sit in meetings and eat in front of people." Well, okay, look, if that's just it, okay, you're going to eat in front of people. That's a little rude, right? Especially if you're not, going to share. But no, it actually gets worse. In fact, the quote ends with saying, "He was always acting like a starving animal who has never eaten before." What? What? Adding, he would just get shit everywhere. What? Look, I understand that that's not the most important issue, right? Well, obviously, the guy's like a apparently super messy eater. Okay, and look, one of the things that were mentioned is how he was eating pudding in a very off-putting way. During a private plane trip from Tallahassee to Washington, D.C. in March of 2019, DeSantis was eating a chocolate pudding dessert by eating it with 3 of his fingers. Look, that's awkward. It's super awkward, right? And actually, it's pretty funny. Look, stuff like that shouldn't matter. Yeah, it's weird. It's fun. But whatever. It shouldn't matter. But actually, in politics, it does. Because again, we are talking about like optics. There's always politics to to talk about, and there's always the optics to consider. And so far, these optics, especially when it comes to a Republican electorate, I mean, seem a little weird. Again, if you compare it to Donald Trump, who is very, I would say, entertaining and personable, even though, again, I think he's a horrible person and no redeeming qualities, but nonetheless, he doesn't put off that vibe. But I'll get to that in a minute. But as far as like weird stuff like this sinking presidential campaigns, we've seen it before. Everybody knows the Dean scream, literally tanking this guy's campaign. And speaking of tanks, I like tanks in politics. What do you think of, other than the military-industrial complex? What do you think of Dukakis? Dukakis and his ridiculous photo op. That's what I think of. Look, this is all. That's all standard Washington politician stuff, and DeSantis is nothing more than a standard Washington politician who has, by the way, really like focused and laser focused on the culture wars in Florida. Now, if you're a standard politician, though, if you're perceived as one, that turns people off. Now, that could help Donald Trump, of course, because, again, the Republican establishment, I think, has never really figured out why Republican voters love Donald Trump. They all despise him, of course. Donald Trump, I mean, he sounds like an idiot, and they're like, oh, this guy's a moron. Like, he's not only a moron, he's also dangerous. Like, what the hell? Well, that's because Donald Trump does not talk or act like a standard and rehearsed and coached politician. Now, that, of course, both helps him, obviously, with the voters. It also hurts him because he gaffes a lot. And look, there's some Republican voters who are like, hey, you might want to not talk about that stuff, or whatever, right? But look, overall, the guy's entertaining, engaging, and of course, very easy to understand. MAGA crowds, they love him. They love him. But that said, DeSantis has a record in Florida that to me personally is absolutely horrifying. But the right loves it. They think it's fantastic. So I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. Weirdo, like, habits aside, it is interesting to look the politics and the optics of him, of DeSantis, basically trying to create a wall between him and the voters, and how that's going to play out, especially since Donald Trump was much more engaging when it comes to the right-wing electorate. So, I don't know, man. Interesting. Personally, I still have Trump beating DeSantis if DeSantis even jumps into the race. But as we all know, of course, things can easily change. Okay. Speaking of what's going on in Florida, we have a story about censorship. Oh boy. All right. As a result of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his Stop Woke Act, a Florida textbook publisher had actually removed all references to race in a lesson about Rosa Parks. Now, Florida requires schools to teach Black history, okay? However, a new law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis prohibits instruction that would compel students to feel responsibility, guilt, or anguish for what other members of their race did in the past, among other limits. As a result, one publisher, Studies Weekly, which is used in 45,000 schools across the country, including Florida elementary schools. Well, the New York Times looked at the lessons put forward by this publisher, or prospective lessons that would be in the newer versions of Florida textbooks. So now they compared these three versions of the company's Rosa Parks story meant for first graders. A current lesson used now in Florida, an initial version created for the state textbook review, and a second updated version. In the current version of the lesson on Rosa Parks, they explain segregation, which is historical. Okay, it's true. They said that the law said African Americans had to give up their seats in the bus if a white person wanted to sit down. That is objectively the truth. Now, a sample social studies curriculum prepared for Florida schools removes earlier references to race from Rosa Parks' story, saying that only she had been told to move to a different seat. And in an updated version created for review by Florida's textbook committee, there is no mention of race at all. In fact, she was told to move to a different seat, the lesson said, without any sort of explanation about segregation. Now, look at the difference here between the lessons. The context is very clear, right? In the first one, there was a discriminatory law that forced Rosa Parks, or would have, that tried to force Rosa Parks to give up her seat to a white person. Now, if you remove the context of mentioning that, hey, that's a discriminatory law passed segregation to make her move because she was a black person, to move to a different seat because a white person wanted to sit there, you remove the context, then you remove the significance of her resistance. You remove the reasoning to her resistance to moving. Or I'm sorry, to not moving in that from that seat. And what you get as a result of removing the context is essentially literal whitewashing. I can't think of a better term for it. Whitewashing the history. So again, that is hugely problematic. You can't just remove race from an explanation of Rosa Parks. But they tried it. Now, the Florida Department of Education was like, okay, you might have gone a little too overboard. In fact, Studies Weekly, they said, had overreached by removing mentions of race. I love it, because they're like, look, we wanted to do this kind of on the down low, kind of remove the overt, that anything that might make, I don't know, white people back then who passed these discriminatory laws look bad. But I think you gave it away a little too much. Okay? Just a little bit too much. Look, here's what they said. Any publisher that avoids the topic of race when teaching civil rights movement, slavery, segregation would not be adhering to Florida law. The department said in a statement. But Studies Weekly said, well, wait, hold on. The whole reason that we did this is because of Florida's law. You said to remove anything that, mentions race that could make potentially a white child feel some sort of shame or guilt for the things that had happened in the past. So we did it. And the only way that we could figure out how to do it is to completely remove any mention of why she was asked to move her seat. We did what you wanted us to do. Why are you mad? So look, this is the direct result here of Ron DeSantis's law, his censorship. Now they're doing it in a ambiguous kind of way, right? And so they're intentionally vague, I think, on what that can. Well, anything that could cause any sort of distress or, make someone feel bad about the actions of their race. Well, what does that? I mean, what does that mean? Like, that leaves a lot of, I think, room for interpretation, because basically what you're making these textbook makers do is try to interpret, like, what's the line? What's too far? What could possibly offend, not the children, by the way. It's not the children that are offended by facts. That's not the ones that are, those aren't the people that are feeling bad about this when they read about history. No, it's conservative parents. Because then they get questions, and those questions are uncomfortable. Okay? And they don't want to deal with those uncomfortable questions about why a black woman was ordered to move on a bus to make room for a white person in this example. So, and look, they, these textbook makers, they're in a kind of a really hard spot, because like they don't want to break state law and be punished or lose business, etc. And so they do have to be very, very careful. And look, this is the same thing with teachers in Florida, by the way. They have to be incredibly cautious not to do anything that could possibly offend parents. And so you have teachers, you have now book makers that are walking on eggshells, trying to avoid anything that could possibly offend right-wing parents. And look, you also have the same situation. It reminds me of doctors in Texas, for example, when they passed abortion bans. So they leave these laws vague enough to where women who need medically necessary abortions to save their lives, well, I mean, what could qualify as an abortion? I mean, this could qualify, and if it does, even though it's life-saving, I got to be careful, because if I do this, that could be considered an abortion. I could, get in trouble. I could be fined. I could lose my license in some places. I could maybe even go to prison if somebody reports me. Now, the result of all these things, and what they all have in common, is the creation of a climate of fear. You have the Republican Party in these states that are using the law in order to make people afraid of offending Republicans. Think about that for a second. I mean, you might as well call these laws snowflake laws, because that's what it is. I mean, how dare you offend Republicans? We're going to get the law after you. If that isn't incredibly dangerous censorship and control, I don't know what else is. Okay. So let's go to Republicans apparently not aware of hungry people. Weird. A Minnesota Republican lawmaker doesn't believe that schools should provide free lunches for hungry kids because he doesn't believe that hungry kids are a problem or that they actually exist. Take a look.
I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that is hungry. Yet today. I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that says they don't have access to enough food to eat. Now, I should say that hunger is a relative term, Mr. President. I had a cereal bar for breakfast. I guess I'm hungry now. That, to some, might be maybe that's the definition of the bill. I don't know. I didn't see a definition of hunger in the bill, Mr. President.
Look at the smug look on that guy's face. Jesus Christ. No, he knows exactly. Hunger. Hungry children. I've never met one, so of course. They couldn't exist. That's why we need to make sure not to help poor people and take the money that we're going to use to help poor people and just give it to my rich friends. That's ultimately the whole point. This guy's an absolute garbage person. By the way, he's now raising money off this. He's saying, oh, look at that. See, hungry people don't exist. I've never met one. Give me money now. Please give me money. Wow. I mean, talk about somebody who has never met another person outside of his tax bracket. I mean, you want to talk about elitists. That guy, definite elitist. And that guy, by the way, is State Senator Steve Drazkowski. By the way, in addition to, saying, oh, hungry people, not real, never met a hungry child, so, we don't need this program, he also called it pure socialism. Because of course.
In Venezuela.
Well, that's what's going to happen if you give the children a free lunch, a universal free lunch. That's what happens. We turn immediately into Venezuela. Look, I mean, Marie Antoinette. That's the other thing that it makes me think of. Children, if you're hungry, why don't you just go to the fridge? I mean, we're the richest country in the world. Poor people have fridges. Did you know that? They have microwaves too. You're not really poor if you have a microwave or refrigerator. You're not really hungry. Well, let them eat cake. Look, here are facts, okay? Look, nearly 275,000 kids get free or reduced price meals in Minnesota in the schools. But at least 18% of those students in grades K through 12 who could qualify for those benefits, they're not getting them. Now, why is that? Well, families hadn't submitted the necessary paperwork to make them eligible. Now, this bill addresses that and says, we're just going to make free lunch completely universal. That's it. You know what that costs, by the way? $200 million. When it comes to feeding hungry children, I don't think that's too much of a cost, right? And I think actually it costs less than some of these, ridiculous conservative lawmakers and the subsidies they give to their rich friends. But here's more. Roughly, this is according to Democrat Senator Heather Gustafson. Roughly 1 in 6 children are food insecure. That means they don't know where or when their next meal will be available if they get one at all. Look, in 2022 alone, Minnesotans made more than 5.5 million visits to the state's 476 food pantries, according to Hunger Solutions Minnesota. And at least 61,000 Minnesota children live in poverty. And at least 1 in 5 children in Drazkowski's own districts is poor enough to qualify for free or reduced priced meals at schools. So hungry people exist. They're literally in his district, 1 out of 5. Maybe he should, I don't know, go outside into his district and actually talk to them. Oh, no, wait, I can't do that. Oh, no.
Can't let that happen.
He's too busy meeting with wealthy donors. He's got to go beg other rich people for cash. And of course, when he receives the cash in the form of campaign donations, you think that they're just giving that money out of the goodness of their heart? No, they expect a return on investment. That return is, of course, to vote to give subsidies to, corporations, deregulate industry, and give tax cuts for the rich. That's really it. It's all goodies for him and his rich friends. That's why he doesn't care about the poor kids. He doesn't give a goddamn about the poor kids. And he's absolutely incredibly smug and proud of it. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Now, look, one more reason, by the way, that this is something like this is actually incredibly necessary for schools and universal, free lunch. Studies have found that children who are not getting enough nutrition, they have a harder time learning. Okay, you can't really learn well on an empty stomach. So if you're food insecure and you're not getting a meal at school, well, you're not exactly learning the lessons. And then, of course, you have a more difficult time being able to be successful in your classes, getting good grades. And of course, that leads to a more difficult time getting a decent career and being able to basically ascend, if that's still at all possible in this country, to a higher, social bracket, essentially, to make it, if you will, even into the, increasingly shrinking middle class. It makes it that much harder. Now you compare that to, of course, rich children who, of course, always get all the best of essentially everything, best kind of education. Obviously, they're well fed and they're set up and prepared for success. Children who do not have, at the very least, food, they're not able to succeed as easily. And I think this guy knows that. And he's like, good. I don't want children who are poor to succeed. I only want rich children to succeed. And ultimately, I think that's the whole point and purpose. Okay. That's quite the show. All right. With that, that's all the stories that I'm talking about today. Let's go to super chats here on YouTube. And member comments as well. Emergency Remedial Truth, member for 5 months, says, hi guys, time flies, but I'm learning things. Well, I'm glad. Greg 1118 says, love your show. We love you and love your show. Love to all. Well, thank you. I love the love. Plenty of it to go around. Really appreciate that and appreciate the $10 super chat as well. Gabby Mathis, thank you for gifting a Waldorf Nation membership. Jonathan Leiter, happy birthday, everyone in Waldorf Nation. Awesome. Thank you for the very kind $2. Mighty Darno, thank you for being a member for 4 months. Says, I've been around. The show rocks. Well, thank you. And then adds and another $2 super chat. Thank you, Jeff and friends. Stay safe till we meet again. You too, as well. No Man's Jam, thank you for the very kind 420. I see what you did there.
Oh yeah.
Have a relaxing weekend. I don't know if that will be possible, but I appreciate the sentiments nonetheless. And I hope you have an relaxing weekend yourself, all of you. All right, so let's go over here to Twitch. Marina McElry Green, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub. Appreciate that. And Jay Villain, thank you for resubbing with Prime for 2 months. And Omniron, love it. Omniron, thank you for subbing with Prime. Appreciate that. That's Bezos bucks. So that goes to it's taken Jeff Bezos. I don't know if is he even running Amazon anymore? It doesn't matter. It's still taking money from Amazon and giving it to me. And I like that. I'll date it. All right, so I think I can do much better with that money than Amazon anyway. So, that's how I feel about it.
I'm not worth your McDonald's money.
No. Thank you, by the way. I really appreciate you, everybody. Again, people who send in super chats, people who send in, gifted subs, memberships, all that stuff. Become patrons. Thank you for all that. I really, really appreciate that. And I just appreciate you, tuning in and liking and sharing the stream and, interacting with the family. So with all of us here, appreciate that. Okay, so with all of that, oh, hey, Straw Carpenter, thank you for the very kind $10 as well. Appreciate that. Made it. Well, I'm glad to see you here. We're kind of right at the end, but you can go through and watch the rest of the VOD or check out the clips later on. All right. So let's raid on Twitch here. Let's go into raid. Let's go KF Logan 1875. We'll do that. Tell them I sent you. And everybody else, thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all later.
Like sharp, NATO, except for food. Tighten up my knee. I like my knee tight.
Please clap.
How you like that, boy? Oh no! Tighten up my knee. Definitely. My.
Jewish space lasers.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
USA, USA, USA.